Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome this morning all of you who come to this beginning or first part dedication ceremony for a wing of this part of the library, which will be dedicated in memory of our friend, in the case, thank God, of a number of students from last year, graduates from last year, alumni who have returned this morning, friend and classmate, Ariel Neuman, alav shalom. It's my pleasure to welcome Ariel's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Neuman, who are here, Mr. and Mrs. Teichman, who were instrumental in putting everything together to make sure this memorial took place. Of course, the members of our staffs, the Rebbeim, other people who are in class, but are going to come towards the end, hopefully, Bez Hashem. We have a lot of people in a small amount of space, and we're grateful for everybody who came here this morning for what we hope is an appropriate tribute. You know, in this week's Sedron Parashas Shlach, the Torah talks to us about two of the heroes among the Meraglim, the spies that were sent to Eretz Yisrael, brought back a relatively negative report, which inspired the people, unfortunately, to refuse to want to go to Eretz Yisrael. Some of the boys who were here just recently came back from their year in Eretz Yisrael. Obviously, going to Eretz Yisrael is always a value of ours, as it was in the Neuman family, as it was for Ariel. And most of the spies, unfortunately, did not capitalize on the experience. However, we speak there about two heroes, Yoshua and Kalev. And in looking at the personalities of Yoshua and Kalev, we find different types of heroes. And if you haven't picked up on it, one of the reasons we speak about heroes, because one of Ariel's great pleasures in his free time, his leisure time, was to read about superheroes. We discussed it at great length, and for those students, those boys who were in Eretz Yisrael or who were in college during the course of this past year who weren't here, we had a memorial siyum in memory of Ariel back, I think it was in December if I'm not mistaken, and we had the whole school downstairs in the auditorium for a school-wide assembly, and we made a siyum on Mishnayos that the boys had learned in his memory, and Mr. Neuman spoke at that time very, very beautifully. I remember Rabbi Cohen was here as well. It was Ariel's Rebbe last year, commenting about Mr. Neuman's remark that this was one of the best Mussar Shmuz, one of the best sermons the boys could possibly hear, and that's how many of us felt. But the heroes, Yoshua and Kalev, both took very different approaches if we look into what Chazal tell us. And the Psukim is not that much, but Kalev was a person who was external, if you will. Vayahas Kalev. Kalev stood up and he made a fuss and he, rallied the people. It's one way of being a hero, being somebody who's dramatic, who's, steps into the fray, who, rallies people around him. That's what Kalev did. He saw an injustice and he stood up and he sought to stop it. Yoshua, however, was known for a different midah. Yoshua was, the Targum tells us, the midah of tznius. It's quieter. Yoshua, in fact, is so quiet that Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid that he'd be negatively influenced by the other spies, and hence changed his name from Hoshea to Yehoshua, the extra Yud representing God's name, and so on, as many of you are aware. And so, in life as well, there are different types of personalities, different types of heroes, different types of people. Some people are the more outward, the more dramatic, the more public kinds of people, and to be honest, they often get the attention. But there are also people who are quiet heroes in their own way, who have that need of tznius, and we misunderstand tznius sometimes. We think tznius is only a matter of how you dress. That's couldn't be further from the truth. So that's only one small piece of the definition of tznius. Tznius is a mindset. Tznius is an attitude towards life. It's how a person carries himself with a certain humility. The pasuk says, walk with tznius, with humility, with dignity, in the presence of your God. It's not a function of dress, not for men and women. That's only a piece of it. I don't minimize. It's important that people misunderstand. I think we think about Ariel. Ariel was that second type of person. Ariel was not, generally speaking, the dramatic, out there guy. More of a quiet dignity. And it was perhaps with this in mind that it was decided, and thought it would be worthwhile, to take a quiet place in our school, a corner of the library where kids like to hang, like to read, and dedicate something in his memory. We'll be purchasing some books, both in the realm of science fiction, which he loved so much, and the realm of Torah Hashkafa, different kind, not halacha sorim and the kinds that we have downstairs, but other things in the realm of Jewish thought, which was an area of interest of his as well. And to have this corner of the library in his memory, eventually there'll be a artist's rendering of one of his comic book heroes, the Green Lantern. I confess to not being that familiar with all the, in my time, I followed Superman and Batman, the DC comics, whatever it is. But we have posters around and signs around the building. Some of you were seniors last year. Remember, we had the Spirit Week. There were different heroes and so on. So that was a hero that Ariel looked up to, and that'll eventually be hanging, I think, over here. And some of you may have seen downstairs as a plaque in his memory. And we want this area to be, for our students, an area for quiet reflection, but at the same time for quiet pleasure, just reading, relaxing, as it should be in a library. To remember a quiet and gentle, but at the same time heroic young man in his own way. And as I say, Yoshua was certainly a very significant figure in Jewish history. Maybe he wasn't, at least initially, that out there guy, that guy in the middle, that guy, but nevertheless a great hero. And we scheduled a very brief presentation for this morning, a description and of what's going to be here. And I know some other people will be joining us a little later. It's a little tight. As some of you know, today's the last day of school, and you guys who graduated last year. Tomorrow night is this year's class's chance. God willing, to graduate tomorrow evening. So it's a busy time for us. But we wanted to take a few minutes out to pay this appropriate tribute. And at this time, I ask everyone to give your attention to Ariel's mom, Mrs. Neuman, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is sort of bittersweet for Mark and I. This is a very happy place for Ariel. Had a wonderful 4 years here. And he especially had, his last year was particularly wonderful. So his senior year came and I said, Ariel, you can take AP classes, or you could take classes at YU. It's an amazing year. You've sort of taken your SATs, you're kind of home free, take advantage. And he did. This is where he spent most of his senior year, I am told. He was here with his friends, and Dr. Taylor got a couple phone calls from me. Try to get him to take classes. We're spending a lot of money. He should be here, and he should be, advancing himself. But, at the end of the day, as I reflect on his life, cut way too short. After 10 days in Israel, unfortunately, at a gap year yeshiva. He spent the best year of his life here, and part of it was because he loved the school, and part of it is that he made some amazing, amazing friends who we had the pleasure of having at our house many times. And the friendships he made will be with us, because I know that these boys will be part of our lives going forward. So, as a result of what I told at Shiva, I got a call from Dr. Taylor that, 3-4 weeks after the Shiva, we would like to devote this portion of the library in Ariel's memory. And I thought that's so amazing, because I felt that Ariel's, not only will his memory be honored, but his spirit will be here in this library, which is important to me. It's not just a plaque, but a whole spirit. And I'm going to share with you the vision we all have had, but I want to quickly thank a few of the people who have been really instrumental in making this happen, because none of this happens without a team rallying to make it happen. So first I want to thank Dr. Taylor for first approaching me with the idea, and already, thank you, lifted my spirits to know that our dear Ariel would have a place in MTA. Thank you. It's a very special place in his heart and our hearts. I want to thank Mr. Dobrik. Where are you? Hey, hello. For his big, big heart and his warm welcome when we come, and I always feel like he's one of the very special people for Ariel and for us. I want to thank Rabbi Talbis, who I think had to field a few questions on this project being out of the box and some of the hashgacha issues that you had to deal with, but thank God everything was talked through and everybody feels comfortable. Miss Daniela, thank you so much for giving all your spirit and your enthusiasm to this project and giving the other students that enthusiasm as well for this, so that it's not just bookshelves. It's a whole, you know, spirit of Ariel. Karen, where's Karen? Hi, thank you. I want to thank you for dealing with all the logistics of making this happen. The painters, the plaques, all the things that go into making this happen. Last but not least, our dear Shira, who I didn't know several months ago, and now I feel like she's my new best friend. And she has been the heart and soul of making this happen. She's put all her energy and her considerable talents in fundraising, in organizing, attention to details and matters that I don't even know that she put her attention to make this happen. And this is just what we're calling the groundbreaking ceremony, because this is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot more, and I want to share with you some of what's happening here. First, we have these shelves that were specifically built by Riley. Thank you, Riley. We have some pictures of Ariel on his graduation day, which was only a few months before, and his chevra, or his posse, his dear friends that are our dear friends too, and who made this a special place for him. So your memories are here too, even though you're graduating, going on to bigger and better things. And one of the things that I think will make this even more special, as I say, in the spirit of Ariel, is that Ariel loved many superheroes, but one of his favorite ones was the Green Lantern, as Rabbi Talbot alluded to. And we have had a very large, like 3 foot by 4 foot decal, which is kind of a sticker for those of you who don't know the decal, made. And unfortunately, we had hoped that it would be on the wall right over here for today, but we subsequently learned you need 2 weeks to let the paint dry, so we couldn't do it. Not to mention, not so easy to put a sticker in this space. But I will show you what it will look like, and for when you return, it will be Ariel, the Green Lantern, with his big green kippah, and he'll be in the sky. So this is, you can pass it around, but this will be up here, very big, so you can't miss it. And we are also going to put stars around on the blue. So yeah, so we have some stars. Actually, I was going to ask maybe a couple of his friends to put the first stars up, so that we can just at least have a little taste of what this is going to be like. I'm looking at you, Daniel. You want to put the first star up?
Oh boy, sure.
Do both, Daniel.
I'm not going to go through all the thank yous. My wife did that. I'll just say ditto. First of all, you should know that what this is depicting, Green Lantern isn't just a superhero. What makes one of his characteristics is that he's really an international space cop. Ellen didn't even know that, so when she started talking about stars, I said, "Do you realize how perfect that is?" All right. And secondly, this battery, see, is one of many batteries. Each cop has his battery, right? But where does the battery get its powers from? Right? It's going to drain sooner or later. So believe it or not, in the center of the universe, there's a planet called Oa, and it's got a gigantic, ultra duper, uber gooper, super duper battery, right? And you have to go back from time to time to the source and get recharged, right? That's what Ariel has done. He's gone back to the source. All right. So this is particularly, when I just said draw a Green Lantern, I didn't realize when he did this, he was depicting my nephew, Michael Neuman. This was Oa, and it just happened, right? And obviously there was a little bit of Ruach HaKodesh there, that the symbolism is you couldn't get more perfect if you tried. I just wanted to talk very briefly. Actually, I thought I had more time. They don't said, no, you've got like about 5 minutes. I was like, okay, I don't usually do talks in 5 minutes, but I'm going to do Torah through comic books because that's what I've always done. So, the most famous guy in comic books, if you know anything about comic books, is Stan Lee. All right? What you may or may not know is that Stan Lee, although I believe now it technically is his actual legal name, that's not how he was born. All right? He was born Stanley Lieber. All right? And obviously he was Jewish. All right? You can do whatever you want or not, but your Jewishness is always going to be there, and the entire world is always going to know it. Always, always, always. So first of all, don't even try and hide. All right? Number two, does anybody know Stanley was, I don't know if statistically if he was the most prolific writer in comic books. He was either statistically the most prolific, but at a minimum he wrote the most successful comic book stories and created the most characters by far of anyone. All right. What do you think, if you know, who wants to hazard a guess, what the single most famous sentence, one sentence out of this man's unbelievably illustrious career? It's hard to imagine saying about a comic book writer in an illustrious career. What do you think might be the one sentence? Who wants to guess on that? Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility.
This man must be a member of the comic book club. That's exactly right. Oops. That didn't go well. And that, it's not going well at all. That came from the very first story of Spider-Man, the very last panel of the very first story of Spider-Man. Someone else left the physical up there. And why is that so powerful? With great power comes great responsibility. I thought about that a lot recently, and it's because they're almost one and the same. Responsibility means you have power or control for the good or the bad, whether you like it or not. If you have power, you automatically have responsibility. Now I was going to go into a whole long thing, but like I said, I only have a few minutes, so I got to shorten this greatly. But the bottom line is, as Jews, you have an enormous amount of power. Not the kind the rest of the world anti-Semitically accuses us of, you know, all right? What I mean is moral power, all right? And you can choose that to elevate the world, or you can just ignore it all, and you can become super successful in many avenues, as we know Jews disproportionately are, right? And they're not mutually exclusive either, right? Obviously. But make sure you choose the moral path. You see, here's the problem. This is why I brought up the comic book line. With great power comes great responsibility. Ariel cannot do anything now. You, I, all of us who knew Ariel have the power to continue in his memory. So what does that really mean? This is a heavy one now. What I just said you all know. What I'm about to say you might not have realized, but it's obvious. It means we also all have the responsibility. So if you knew him, or knew of him, or knew someone who knew him, and whatever you do in life, it's not in Ariel's memory in some way, fashion, or form, even if it's just in your own mind, you know, then you are not letting him become even more what he could be, one, in this world through the emanations of what you do, and secondly, for him, his neshama himself rising in Shemayim. So that's the first thing. Stanley was a smart cookie. He wasn't an observant Jew, but his Jewishness came out whether he liked it or not. And I just wanted to give an appeal to make sure that you understand you have great power in many, many avenues, and specifically when it comes to Ariel, we also all have great responsibility. Of course, it's Ella and me who has the most responsibility. But that doesn't mean any of you have no responsibility, right? Because you all have an immense amount of power. That's one quick little thing I wanted to say. The other two fast things is, I bet you none of you have ever heard of The Shield, all right? He came out in 1940. And I'll be honest with you, life is so difficult for me now, getting out of the bed, going back to the bed, that I used to really, my appreciation for comics was more 60s, 70s, you know, the more complex stuff. The 1940s and 1950s, or even late 30s, 40s, 50s comic books was not my thing. Too simple, but for historical and background perspectives, I collected those two and read them. I'm now very attracted to the 40s. I need simple in my life. Life is right, for Ellen and me right now, is we're down to the core for obvious reasons. So anyway, I picked this up. This is the first page of the first, very simple artwork and simple writing. Why am I bringing up The Shield? You've never heard of him. And if I didn't bring him up, you never would have heard of him. By the way, The Shield was published by the MLJ publishing group, which is actually later became Archie Comics. So who would ever associate a superhero, The Shield, with Archie, right? But anyway, I bring it up because it's very interesting. If you notice the shield, the shape of the shield's a triangle. Right? Captain America, if you've seen the movie or know the comic books at all, has a round shield. Can anybody tell me whether that statement is in fact true? And if it's not, why not, where not? That's a pretty leading question. Obviously it's not true what I just said. Does anybody know where or not? No. The very first issue of Captain America, he had a triangular shield. Every single issue thereafter, for all time, he had a round shield. Of course, in those days, in the 40s, things were so simple, no one even bothered trying an explanation. So they just switched, right? There's a reason. Because you see, the shield came first. And they sued him. They said, you know, you cannot do this, all right? There's a lot of reasons why comic books and every literature and things in life happen, and there could be business reasons, it's not always artistic reasons. So, you know, what was so cool is that the truth is that the triangular shield is kind of useless. All you can do is hold it. The round shield, you can throw it, you can go ping, 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 right, and bounce and get a lot of guys at once. And in the end, and a round shield can be a little bit more mesmerizing, so you're more apt to try and, you know, go for that. So this is a very comic book way of saying we have to try and make lemonade out of lemons. All right, you know, you could have been bummed and say, you know, my first issue, which was wildly successful, by the way, the very first issue of Captain America was wildly successful. They got sued. You can't do this anymore, and that was obviously an integral part of the character. And if you have to change it, maybe you just the whole thing's gonna bomb, right? So Ariel's gone. That's a pretty big lemon. That's a pretty big lemon. I don't know if I can make lemonade out of this. I don't know if Ellen can make lemonade out of this. I have a hope, though, that if all of us together, again, it's the same pitch in a different way, you know, can do whatever we can to make this world a better place in his memory. All right, maybe some lemonade can come out. Can't thank you enough. Like I said in the beginning, ditto, but just want to thank you for being here, standing this long, listening to me babble. I'm just very impressed with all the green. I mean, this is great. This is really great stuff. I hope this is well used. Like I said, there's a lot more I really had planned to say, but I've already gone way past my 5 minutes. So that's it for me. Thank you.